The alien research vessel Vaithra drifted in the black stillness between stars, its silver hull glinting like a scalpel poised for dissection. Inside its sterile laboratories, the air reeked faintly of ozone and sterilizing fluid. Rows of pale-eyed scientists clustered around hollow displays, reviewing intercepted transmissions from a species they had long dismissed as myth. Humans. Biologically inconsistent, one muttered, long fingers dancing over projection runes. His voice dripped with disdain. Aggression surpassing sustainability. They should have extinguished themselves before their atmosphere ever cleared from volcanic soot. Another snickered, mandibles clattering faintly. Legends, not living organisms. A species that fights itself to near extinction repeatedly? Utter nonsense. Around them, laughter spread, smug and clinical. Humanity, to the Vaithra's crew, was a parable for cadets, a reminder of how evolution favored restraint, how true civilizations outgrew bloodlust. Humans, if they ever had existed, were impossibilities. At the observation deck above, Admiral Zaylan reclined in his throne-like chair, expression languid with boredom. His empire had subjugated dozens of worlds, broken countless resistances, all without real opposition. His gaze slid over the glowing blue sphere projected before him, Earth catalogued as a minor habitable planet with scattered colonies nearby. "So," he said softly, his voice carrying weight enough to hush the laughter below, "we finally confront this ancient tale. I expect disappointment." The scientists bent low, cowed yet curious. Zaylan was not one to be crossed. He had climbed through centuries of war to reach command, a figure carved from victory and ruthlessness. His word defined whether species would kneel or vanish. To him, Earth was just another step, another conquest to broadcast back to the Empire's restless citizens. Still, one among the scientists hesitated. Dr. Cernith, younger than most, leaned closer to the restrained human lying unconscious on the surgical dais. A male, his frame powerful despite the restraints biting into his flesh. The scans whispered anomalies, bone density absurdly high, redundant organ system scarred but still functional, neural pathways flashing with chaotic resilience. Cernith swallowed as the data poured in. "This is no myth," he whispered, unheard at first. Then louder, "Admiral. The scans, they contradict everything." Zaylan's slitted eyes narrowed, mused. "Contradict? You mean confirm their absurdity?" "No, Admiral. They survived atmospheric collapses, radiation bursts, repeated chemical poisoning. Their genome is littered with scars, evidence of countless near extinctions. It is as if catastrophe was their tutor. This is not weakness. It is endurance refined." The room chilled. Even laughter faltered. The restrained human stirred, eyelids fluttering open. His gaze fixed on the nearest alien with unflinching calm. No plea, no fear, just a long, steady look that pierced through their assumptions. His lips moved, forming words the translators struggled to process until the machine shivered with clarity. "You shouldn't have come." The phrase hung heavy, absurdly calm, like a verdict already passed. Zaylan chuckled, masking unease. "Sedate him." His tone dismissed the warning as bravado. Yet something unsettled him, not the words, but the stillness with which they were spoken. Conquered beings screamed, cursed, begged. They did not deliver sentences like judges. Cernith's mandibles clicked nervously. "Admiral, I advise caution. If one human is this." "Enough." Zaylan rose, towering in dark regalia. "We have grown indulgent in debating fables. Tomorrow we descend on Earth itself. Then we will see whether these apes roar or whimper." The command echoed across the vessel, sparking movement, preparations, the grinding confidence of an empire used to easy victories. Yet Cernith lingered by the sleeping human, watching the faint scars etched across his skin, the faintest curve of a smirk, as though he had overheard every word. Later, in the silence of his private chamber, Admiral Zaylan replayed the prisoner's warning. He told himself it was nothing, just primitive bravado. Still, when the words repeated in the stillness, "You shouldn't have come," they did not sound like a threat. They sounded like inevitability. By the time the Vaithra adjusted course for Sol, the Admiral had buried his unease beneath arrogance. Yet Cernith, staring at the expanding image of Earth, could not shake the feeling that the planet was not waiting to be conquered. It was waiting for something else entirely. The restrained human dreamed, jaw tightening against the sedatives, and though no one in the lab could hear him, his dream was filled with fire, with warnings written in mushroom clouds and trenches soaked in mud. He dreamed not of fear, but of history repeating itself. And when he woke again, he smiled. The alien fleet slid into the Sol system like a spearhead of gleaming shadows, 100 warships blotting out the starlight as they arranged themselves in formation. Admiral Zaylan stood at the observation dome, hands clasped behind his back, his posture regal, as if this moment had been staged for him alone. Earth turned slowly below, blue and green swathed in cloud, deceptively gentle in its beauty. He regarded it with the calm contempt of a hunter sighting fragile prey. Unremarkable, he said, almost disappointed. A planet too stubborn to die. Yet that ends today. Around him, subcommanders bowed their heads, eager for the order. They carried the weight of their empire's arrogance as naturally as their armor. But not all shared their certainty. Dr. Cernith stood to the side, gaze fixed on the tactical displays, mandibles twitching with unease. He saw the discrepancies, the odd flickers in orbital scans, the energy surges far beneath the planet's crust, signals that did not behave like civilian broadcasts. He opened his mouth, hesitated, then forced himself to speak. "Admiral, forgive me, but the data does not." Zaylan's tone sliced like a blade. "You see hesitation where there is none. They have no true defenses. My empire will witness this conquest live, and when it is done, the myth of humans will be silenced." The order came swift and absolute: descend. Columns of alien ships ignited their engines, streaking toward orbit with precision. The fleet's arrogance was broadcast across the empire, every strike transmitted in real time, a theater of dominance. They rained fire on orbital platforms that crumbled far too easily. The spectacle was perfect for propaganda, each explosion a symbol of inevitability. And yet, Cernith's claws clenched as he studied the patterns. The debris did not drift as it should. The platforms were not defense stations, but hollow shells, deliberately placed to break apart. "Admiral," Cernith said again, voice tighter, "they wanted us to destroy those." Zaylan's gaze flickered toward him, irritation masked as calm. "You imagine phantoms." But the truth revealed itself moments later. The wreckage shimmered, dispersing to uncover vast arrays of hidden satellites, their signatures masked until now. In the silence that followed, Earth's reply arrived. A single pulse of energy shot outward, not random, not panicked, precise. The first alien dreadnought convulsed. Its shields collapsed in an instant, a needle of kinetic force piercing its command core. No warning, no time for countermeasures. One ship, then another, fell in surgical strikes that cut through them, as if by design. On the command deck, silence reigned. Not shock from defeat, they had won countless wars, but the silence of realization. This was no accident. The humans had not merely prepared. They had waited. A voice came across every alien channel, steady and unhurried, spoken in flawless translation. "This is Earth. You will cease hostilities. Leave our skies and return to your homes. If you continue, we will remove you." The calmness was worse than fury. Fury they could dismiss as desperation. Calmness spoke of certainty. Zaylan's lips curled in disdain. "They bluff." He raised his hand, signaling renewed bombardment. But even as his order rang out, the battlefield betrayed him. Human vessels emerged not from planetary hangars, but from silent wormholes scattered among the fleet itself. Black, angular ships that seemed carved from void. They did not shout their arrival. They simply began dismantling the invaders piece by piece. Subcommanders cried reports, navigation compromised, weapons dead, ships vanishing into wormholes that appeared and closed like the blink of an eye. It was not war as they knew it, it was dissection. Dr. Cernith's chest tightened. He remembered the human prisoner, the warning whispered through cracked lips. "You shouldn't have come." He realized, in that moment, it had not been a threat. It had been a simple truth. He turned toward the Admiral, voice breaking through the chaos. "Admiral, this is not desperation. This is orchestration. They knew. They lured us." Zaylan's hands clenched the railing. Pride warred with the creeping sensation of dread that tightened his chest. He watched as one of his capital ships, the pride of the fleet, vanished in a burst of white light. No debris, no explosion, simply gone. He whispered, almost to himself, "How long have they been planning this?" The human transmission returned, quieter this time, as if spoken directly into his ear. "We asked you to leave." For the first time in centuries of command, Admiral Zaylan did not have an immediate response. His empire had trained him to crush opposition, to never consider the possibility of defeat. But what unfolded around him was not defeat in battle. It was being shown how irrelevant he was. Somewhere deep inside, fear dug its claws. He straightened, forcing control back into his voice. Rally the fleet. Push forward. They are flesh and bone. No matter their toys, they will break. Yet his words fell flat against the raw efficiency of what they all witnessed. On the tactical display, alien ships that retreated found themselves spared, wormholes closing gently behind them. It was deliberate, a message wrapped in mercy. Humanity could have annihilated them all, but instead they chose to show restraint. And restraint, Cernith realized with a chill, was far more terrifying than slaughter. By the battle's end, the alien fleet was fractured, pride punctured by silence. Zaylan sat rigid in his command throne, refusing to acknowledge what his heart already knew. Cernith, watching the human formations withdraw into their wormholes, understood something larger. This had not been a victory for Earth alone. It had been a demonstration, a message meant not for one fleet, but for the galaxy. As the battered remnants of the Vaethra limped away from Earth's gravity well, the human voice echoed one final time. Do not mistake our patience for weakness. We endured our own extinction once. We will not allow another. The channel cut, leaving nothing but static and the weight of unspoken truth. Cernith turned toward the Admiral. Zaylan's face was carved into a mask of control, but his eyes betrayed the first spark of doubt. For Cernith, that spark was more frightening than any explosion. It meant the myth had become real. It meant the impossible species was awake. And somewhere deep beneath his fear, he wondered if the Empire's greatest mistake was not attacking Earth, but forcing humanity to reveal what they had been hiding all along. The Vaethra limped through silent corridors of space, its hull scarred where human precision had cut deep. Entire decks lay dark, their crews reduced to whispers of panic. Admiral Zaylan walked the command bridge with the same rigid poise he had worn at Earth, yet his stride betrayed the faintest hesitation. The silence of his officers was worse than open fear. They waited for him to speak, to reassert control, to remind them of who they were. But for the first time in his long career, words eluded him. Dr. Cernith stood apart, his posture tense. He reviewed battle logs again and again, each playback unraveling another thread of certainty. The humans had not merely defended, they had dissected, anticipated, manipulated. Every strike had been timed not for destruction, but for demonstration. They wanted the invaders alive to witness. The conclusion gnawed at him. This was not war. It was a warning. At last, Zaylan broke the silence. They have learned deception from us. That is all. His voice rang steady, rehearsed. Every empire rises by studying its predators. Humanity has simply studied well. But Cernith's mandibles clicked nervously. No, Admiral. They are not mimicking us. Their wars against themselves shape them. They survive cataclysm after cataclysm. What they revealed above Earth was not imitation. It was identity. The Admiral's eyes narrowed. You mistake endurance for superiority. They bleed as all species bleed. Yet his hands tightened behind his back as the bridge doors opened, revealing a junior officer bearing a data cube. Recover transmissions, the officer stammered, from human networks. They are history. Curiosity pried its way past Zaylan's armor of arrogance. He gestured sharply. The cube projected a sequence into the air, trenches drowning in mud, gas clouds swallowing soldiers who clawed at their faces, cities burning under ceaseless bombardment, skies split by mushroom clouds that turned day into ash-filled night. The crew flinched. Some looked away. Cernith did not. He leaned forward, horrified yet fascinated. Each image screamed of a species clawing through its own extinction again and never yielding. Zaylan's jaw tightened. They record their own horrors. They glorify them. But the footage betrayed no glorification, only cold remembrance. Soldiers wept in black and white film. Children stared hollow-eyed from rubble. Generals signed orders with hands that shook. And yet each time, the species rebuilt. Each ruin gave birth to new machines, faster weapons, sharper minds. Cernith whispered, they are not shaped by victory, Admiral. They are shaped by survival. They turned their planet into a crucible, and what emerged is something we do not understand. A ripple of unease swept through the bridge. The officers had fought dozens of species, yet none had recorded their own nightmares with such unflinching clarity. None had worn suffering as a mantle rather than a wound. Zaylan forced a smile that did not touch his eyes. Stories. Shadows of a primitive past. Their arrogance is believing such scars make them invincible. But even as he said it, his gaze lingered too long on the mushroom cloud blooming across the hollow display. He imagined his empire's cities under such fire, and for a fleeting moment, he could not picture them rising from the ashes. The council demanded his presence soon after. Hollow forms of the empire's high rulers flickered to life in the strategy chamber, their voices sharp with disbelief and anger. Reports of the failed assault had already spread, rumors magnified into panic. Some counselors sneered, dismissing the battle as a fluke, a matter of luck. Others trembled with the knowledge that an empire had met something it could not crush. "You exaggerate," one scoffed. "A minor skirmish, nothing more." "Withdraw the fleet before morale collapses," another urged. Zaylan stood tall before them, concealing the tremor in his bones. "Withdraw, and we admit weakness. Humanity thrives on perception. Show fear, and the myth becomes truth. No, we strike again. Harder, smarter. We cannot yield to fables." The council fractured into argument, voices overlapping in chaos. Cernith, summoned as scientific advisor, waited for silence before speaking. "You misunderstand. This is not myth. It is inevitability. Humans are not stronger because they resist us. They are stronger because they resist themselves. Every war prepared them for us without ever knowing we existed." The chamber quieted. For an instant, his words seemed to land, to crack the armor of denial. But denial is a fortress. A counselor sneered. "You sound infected by their propaganda." Another spat. "You would have us tremble before savages." Zaylan seized the moment, twisting Cernith's caution into his own resolve. He is correct about one thing. They have prepared themselves. But no species is unbreakable. They bleed, and we will make them bleed again. The council hesitated, torn between pride and fear. In the end, arrogance prevailed. Orders were given. The fleet would regroup, reinforced by new warships, and strike not only at Earth, but at its colonies, severing its strength from the root. Back aboard the Vaethra, Cernith approached the Admiral in private. "Admiral, you know the Council is blind. You saw their history. You know what we face." Zaylan's mask slipped for the briefest moment. His eyes, cold as obsidian, revealed the truth he dared not speak to the Council. He had seen the footage. He had felt the tremor of doubt. But pride was iron in his veins. "Fear is their weapon," he said, voice low. "If I surrender to it, they win before another shot is fired." Cernith pressed on. "This is not about fear. It is about understanding. We cannot fight them as we fight others. They are not prey. They are predators who turned inward first." The Admiral turned away, staring out into the dark between stars. "Then we will become the hunters of hunters. Better to die in defiance than to cower before ghosts." Cernith felt the futility of his words. He saw the path laid out, not victory but ruin. Yet he could not stop it. He could only watch as the fleet prepared once more, as officers steeled themselves with bravado that rang hollow in the silence of their hearts. The human prisoner, still restrained deep in the Vaethra cells, opened his eyes again. He had been silent since Earth, conserving his strength, his smirk never fading. A guard taunted him, asking if his people would celebrate such a minor skirmish. The human chuckled softly. "Celebrate," he murmured. "No, we don't celebrate survival. We prepare for the next fight." The guard shifted uneasily, unsettled by words delivered without malice. In the quiet of the cell, the prisoner's laughter echoed faintly, not mocking, but knowing. Above, in the Admiral's chamber, Zaylan replayed the human footage once more, his hand frozen mid-air as a mushroom cloud unfurled across the screen. He told himself he was studying the enemy. But the truth whispered inside him. He was studying the end of empires. The Vaethra's engines flared as the fleet bent its course toward human colonies, a spear hurled into the unknown. The Admiral stood rigid, face carved in stone, while Cernith watched him with a scientist's dread. For all his words of defiance, Zaylan could not hide the shadow behind his eyes. And in that shadow, Cernith saw the first cracks of a truth too vast to contain. The humans had not fought their greatest war yet. But when they did, it would not be the humans who trembled. The alien fleet surged through the black, bolstered by reinforcements and sharpened by wounded pride. To the Empire's citizens, the Council promised vengeance and certainty, broadcasting grand speeches of inevitable triumph. But inside the command chambers of the Vaethra, Admiral Zaylan felt the weight of silence pressing harder than the boasts. His officers moved with mechanical precision, masking unease with discipline, their eyes carefully avoiding his when the tactical displays flickered. Pride carried them forward, but pride was a fragile shield. Dr. Cernith stood at his console, mandibles tight, eyes darting between readings that refused to make sense. Human colonies did not scatter like prey. They did not scream into the void, begging for rescue. Instead, their signals remained calm, eerily calm, as if they were not being attacked but waiting for something. He remembered the prisoner's quiet smirk, the unshaken warning in his eyes. The data unfolding now, the deliberate gaps, the controlled silences, looked less like weakness and more like bait. The fleet descended upon the first colony, its surface seemingly undefended. Cities lay dormant, systems powered down, the silence unnerving. Zaylan ordered bombardment. Fire rained from the heavens, carving deep scars into the planet's crust. Yet when the dust cleared, no cries, no resistance, only void. Then came the first ripple. Space itself bent, wormholes blossoming open around the fleet like silent wounds in reality. Human ships poured through, not in grand fleets but in surgical squadrons, each strike timed with merciless precision. They did not aim to overwhelm. They aimed to dismantle. A carrier's engines flared once, then died, its systems subverted by invisible infiltrators. A destroyer spun, its weapons hijacked, turning fire upon its allies. Across the void, human drones swarmed like metallic insects, cutting through armor with surgical beams, vanishing before counterfire could track them. Panic flickered in the eyes of the crew. The calm efficiency of the enemy was worse than brutality. No taunts, no cries of victory, just silence and precision. On the bridge, Zaylan gripped the rail, his knuckles white against the polished alloy. Rally! Break formation, strike back. His voice carried the weight of authority, but it faltered against a reality unfolding around him. Cernith leaned closer to his display, his throat tightening. Admiral, they are not striking at us. They are striking through us. Every ship they disable falls in exact sequence, as if following a design we cannot see. His eyes widened. This is not improvisation. This was prepared long before we came. Zaylan's jaw clenched. No species plan so far ahead. The bridge lights dimmed for a heartbeat as a human transmission pierced their systems. A voice, calm, deliberate, filled the air. You chose escalation. We warned you. Now you will understand. The message ended. No threat, no flourish, just inevitability. Outside, the battle turned into collapse. Human wormholes bloomed across multiple star systems simultaneously, fleets appearing in places the Empire had never thought vulnerable. Communications fractured, reports arriving of entire shipyards vanishing in coordinated strikes, supply routes shredded before fleets even left dock. It was not an assault, it was a dismantling of an Empire's spine. The counselors screamed through the comms, demanding explanation, demanding action. Zaylan silenced them with a gesture, though inside he felt the icy hand of dread at his throat. He had watched species crumble before, seen planets burn, but never had he seen an enemy strike with such economy, such inevitability. This was not conquest. This was inevitability given shape. In the depths of the Vaethra, the human prisoner watched guards scramble as alarms screamed. He leaned back against his restraints, calm amid the chaos, his eyes reflecting the flicker of failing lights. This is how it always begins, he murmured. You think war is about power. For us, it was always about survival. And survival is the sharpest teacher. Above, Zaylan's mask of composure cracked as another wave of reports poured in. Sectors gone. Armadas lost. Entire populations whispering of humans as death worlders, predators who could not be stopped. His pride demanded defiance, but his reason whispered what Cernith had already seen clearly. This was not a war they could win. The Admiral's voice dropped to a near whisper. What are they? Cernith answered without hesitation. The product of their own extinction. A species forged in fire and rebuilt in ash. They do not fight for victory. They fight because they refuse to vanish. For the first time, Zaylan felt the cold coil of fear tighten inside him, not for his fleet, not for his empire, but for the truth that they had awakened something that had long been sleeping, biding its time. The final blow came not as fire but silence. Human fleets pulled back, leaving crippled ships drifting in the void, leaving wormholes sealed behind them. It was not mercy, but something worse, restraint. They had shown what they could do, and then they had stopped, as if to say, we control the pace. We decide the end. The bridge crew sat frozen in the aftermath, the weight of survival heavier than destruction. Zaylan's pride trembled, caught between rage and despair. He expected death, but instead, another human transmission arrived, quiet and merciless. You have seen enough. Return home. Rebuild if you can. But know this, we will not be hunted. If you seek us again, you will not find patience waiting. The words ended, and the silence that followed was unbearable. The galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath. The Council, shaken by the collapse of fleets and the paralysis of will, offered no further orders. The Empire's grip had been broken not by annihilation, but by the realization that annihilation had been spared. That mercy was the sharper blade. Zaylan sat in his command throne, shoulders heavy, eyes hollow. He had dreamed of glory, of another jewel for his empire, but now he saw himself reflected in the calm cruelty of humanity's restraint. Not a conqueror, but a child who had poked a sleeping predator. Dr. Cernith stood beside him, voice low. They did not destroy us because they do not need to. That is the worst truth, Admiral. They have already won. The Admiral closed his eyes. He wanted to deny it, to roar against inevitability, but all that came was silence. Humanity had shown its face, and he knew now what it meant. The Empire would never sleep soundly again. Far away, aboard a human command vessel hidden deep within its wormhole network, officers stood in silence as their commander delivered the final order. There was no cheer, no celebration, no banners of victory. Only quiet acknowledgement. The galaxy had been warned. Humanity had revealed itself, and there was no turning back. On the Vaethra, Admiral Zaylan opened his eyes one last time to the empty stars. He realized then the most chilling truth of all: humans had not fought this war to win. They had fought to remind the galaxy of something it had forgotten. That survival, honed into inevitability, was the most terrifying weapon in existence. And in that silence, as the battered fleet turned away from Earth, the Admiral felt his empire collapse inside him long before it collapsed outside.